Support for this program is provided by
The Women's Hospital delivers comprehensive health care to women and infants through inpatient and outpatient obstetrical, gynecologic, and education programs. The Women's Hospital, only at Deaconess.
and by Toyota Indiana, Pump It Up Evansville, and Gigi's Cupcakes.
Depression has so many faces. It is fear, and it's hurt, and it's physical pain. But for this episode, we're talking about teenage depression. Madison tells her story about her depression as a teenager and how that felt, what she was thinking, and more importantly, what that drove her to do, and the behaviors that she took on to cope with that depression. So you may think that her story is extreme, but she goes into an eating disorder and then she starts cutting. Okay, that may be extreme, but we know that half of teenagers develop some sort of an eating problem because of the behaviors that they're taking. And we know that 1 in 12 teens between the ages of 14 and 19 are practicing some sort of self-harm. So really, her story may not be as extreme as you think it is. These things are happening. I'm shocked by it. I kind of hope you are too, because then maybe we can see something a little bit differently. And if you have a teen in your life or a young person that you may have a gut feeling that something's going on, well, we hope we've educated you with our doctors and our social workers that are on today and empower you to support them in the way that they need to be supported. Tell me about when you were a kid. Let's start there. How old are you now?
I'm 16.
16. Okay, so talk about when you were like a young person, a grade school or so. Were you happy?
I was happy, but at the same time I was also kind of distracted. My mind was all over the place. And then it was in 3rd grade that I was diagnosed with depression.
Did you know that you were sad?
No, not really. I just thought that everyone thought like that, and that it was the way that it was for everyone. I just thought that I was like weak or something.
So how did that progress into like 4th and 5th grade?
Well, I also have a mood disorder, so for me it was kind of up and down. So when I was up, I was really, really up and really happy, but when I was down, I was super, super depressed. So it kind of fluctuated throughout like middle school and everything.
What were your emotions back then? Do you remember how you felt or what your thoughts were? Or do you remember any of that?
I remember feeling like an outsider. I felt like I was watching everyone, live their life and be happy, and I just couldn't be a part of it because I just for some reason didn't feel up to it. I didn't feel motivated. So my friends would be going out and doing things, and I just would say that I couldn't go because I wanted to stay home and just be alone. Because over the years I got kind of like a comfort feeling from depression because it's just something that you can go back to and it's always constant. So it's terrible, but in a way it's kind of comforting because it's just always there. Back then when I was depressed, I would just stay at home and I would try and distract myself kind of with whatever I could, whether it was like TV or reading, but most of the time I would just sleep. I would sleep a lot and just stay in bed and stare at the ceiling and listen to music. And then whenever I was manic and like really happy, I would just be completely hyper and bouncing off the walls and, getting in trouble in class because I just couldn't sit still.
Did you ever get on any kind of medication?
Yeah, when I was younger, I took medication and then I switched a few times until I finally found the right medication for it.
Do you feel better when you took it?
There was a complete 180 when I started taking the right medication.
So when did you start taking the medication?
The medication that I'm on now, I started taking probably towards the beginning of the school year.
So
the
recently?
End, yeah,
so back then you were not on medicine?
The end of summer. I was on medicine, but it wasn't the right fit for me.
So it wasn't the right, okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So there was some effort there, but it just wasn't, you hadn't found the right...
Mm-hmm.
Were you seeing a therapist or a counselor at the time?
I was off and on for a while because I had an eating disorder, so I was very hesitant to go to any sort of therapist or anyone like that to open up. So.
When there's a high amount of emotion and energy and reactiveness, there can be that can be where drug or alcohol use, of course, comes in there. That's also where they might use something like cutting or some sort of non-suicidal self-injury is what it's called, but that's the idea of I'll hurt myself because I can't handle this emotion at the time. And cutting is the most common, but there's other forms of that. Burning might be kind of the next one. I think it is, those are the ones that are the hardest to understand. Sexual behavior is another one, or running away, or just lying a lot. Got a lot of kids who just lie or impulsively steal things or break rules of all different kinds just because they want to or because they're upset about something that's gone on with them.
So depression is definitely not one single thing. And, even just saying there are two kinds of depression is probably limiting it. There are probably multiple variations of depression. What we're going to see is the expression of that, though, is going to look a lot the same. So we're going to see a lot of the same signs and symptoms regardless of what the etiology of that depression is. Now, we need to figure out the etiology of the depression, though, in order to effectively help people. And that's where your mental health professionals are going to be very helpful in figuring out what's the right way to go about helping this person come back from this depressive episode or this depression that they might be in.
Okay. And so is it the length of time that the person is depressed that really gives us that, if somebody's sad for a couple days or something, but is it more than that? And when does it become a problem?
When is it a problem? Sure. So, I think it's important to note that we all get sad. We all have bad days. We all have bad weekends. We all have bad weeks. There certainly have been weeks where I think everybody can relate to, it's dreary, it's glum, things just haven't gone right all week.
Things that going our way, there's a situation that we're just
exactly.
Come on.
Why isn't this over yet?
Right.
And so, in the course of normal humanness, we're all going to have those experiences. Where we want to really start to take notice is if those symptoms are persisting for more than a couple of weeks. We are not meant to be in that state for very long. So generally, even though it's perfectly normal to go through it, we'll kind of rebound from that and come back to a better way of being. When we're stuck in that, though, for more than 2 weeks, if we're going into 3 weeks, a month, or even longer, that's when we're really going to want to be looking at this is something that is a bit of a problem, and we're going to want to seek some assistance.
Looking back on when I was young, my problems with my eating disorder was all about control. I felt out of control, and that was the one thing that I could control. Do you relate to that at all?
Yeah, my life was completely out of control because I had moved here and I felt like I had no control over my emotions, and I had no control over where I was living because my parents would randomly ask me to come stay with them, and I really hated that. So I felt like I had no control over anything. So I just took control of eating and my weight, and I felt honestly like I was going insane because I would feel my ribs on my body and I could feel the bones poking out, but then I would run to the mirror and look in the mirror and I would just see fat. So I just felt like I was going crazy because it was always on my mind and I couldn't read a book or watch a TV show because my mind was always just like in this constant cycle. At the beginning, I wasn't very good at hiding it. My eating disorder was like anorexia, binge purge subtype. So I was purging everything I was eating. And at the beginning, I wasn't good at it. And my parents noticed, or my dad actually called me out on it. And I started losing weight like super fast. And I remember when I hit like 115, my mom took me into an eating disorder specialist and he said that I needed to be hospitalized like immediately. And my mom looked over at me and she was like, Madison, are you okay with that? And I said, no. And I started crying because I didn't want to gain any weight. So she said, okay. And so I didn't have to go. And I just continued to get worse and worse and worse. But I hid it under baggy clothes. And, since they saw me eating at the dinner table, they thought that I was fine. Or if they ever had found like dirty dishes from when I had binged, they would think that I was eating, so I was fine. Or, whenever I'd go days without eating, I would just tell them that I had ate. So they never really knew, I guess. When I hit my lowest weight around 100 pounds, I realized like I'm not the one in control here because I'm not making any decisions. And I would start thinking things like, I don't want to work out, I really don't want to, but I have to. And, I would just keep wondering, why do I have to do these things? Why don't other people have to do these things and I do? So I just started realizing that I wasn't in control anymore.
So, what age did you start cutting?
I started cutting when it was the summer before my sophomore year. My cutting got worse the worse my eating disorder got.
Okay.
Because I would also use that as, I would use it as a distraction from the pain I was feeling inside, but also I would use it as a self-punishment for eating.
Where did you learn of cutting?
The internet. Well, the first time I heard of it was when I was in the 6th grade, and I had heard my friends like joking about it or something, and we were at a fair type thing, and somebody had a bunch of wristbands on, and they were like, oh, that's what cutters do. And I'm like, what? People like cut themselves? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, is that safe? Like, what are these people doing out? Like, if they're hurting themselves, are they going to do that to other people? Like, I didn't understand it at all. And then I kind of discovered the internet kind of depression, which only worsened my depression.
What do you mean by that?
Well, on the internet, specifically Tumblr, they just, they completely romanticize depression into being some fairy tale where somebody's going to come and save you from harming yourself, and there's going to be some magical ending, when in reality you're just, you're just making yourself sicker and you're not doing anything productive. And there would just be pictures of, girls with tons of cuts on their legs and tons of cuts on their arms and stuff like that. And, depressing songs, depressing, clips from TV shows or whatever, put into black and white with, depressing quotes and just stuff like that would really get to me because I was already in a depressed state. So
That would take you farther under?
yeah.
Wow.
That just kind of made me think okay, well, maybe this is a solution, or maybe one day I'll find my Prince Charming who will fix everything. And I didn't really think that I would have to fix it myself.
I'd either hold it, so I was holding the tip of it and then scrape it across,
or I would take it and start at the end and then go like that. This one, I think I just dragged it straight across, but
How bad does it hurt?
I mean, depends on how deep you're pressing.
The whole idea of this area of non-suicidal self-harm, or inflicting harm upon oneself, for a lot of people is really seeking relief. So a lot of folks who have experienced some pretty significant traumas in their life will use those kinds of coping methods because we get an endorphin rush when we do that, and we actually feel better, and nothing else has made us feel better. And so once we get that kind of reinforcement, it's really hard to stop that behavior because now I have something that's making me feel good. Why would I want to give that up?
It felt like there was just like this buildup of emotions inside, and you don't know how to get it out. You just want to get it out. You just want you want some form of release, but there's nothing that really seems satisfying except maybe screaming. So hurting yourself just feels like a distraction and kind of like that release.
We actually get a physiological bump from that because when we cut, right, we actually physiologically, our bodies respond by expelling endorphins and getting a lot of self-made opioid hormones in our body that go out that deaden the pain, both emotional and physical. And so we get that benefit from that behavior, even though we're hurting ourselves.
For me, I would do it, there was a point where I did it almost every day or multiple times a day. So the feeling becomes less, it becomes less strong. So you have to cut deeper and deeper, and it just doesn't stop.
So when we work with folks, we want to really look at how can we replace that behavior. We want to give you tools that are going to help you feel better. Yet we don't want you to do something that could possibly hurt yourself any worse. So we look at a lot of harm reduction techniques. We look at a lot of coping strategy techniques for how we help somebody be able to feel better without needing to hurt themselves more anymore.
All kids get upset, and then all kids overreact at one point in time or another. What we have to figure out is which kids are more vulnerable. And I don't think it's really related to socioeconomic status, but I think it is related to if they have a good relationship with their parent or guardian or not. If they've got a really good relationship with their mom or dad or aunt or grandma, or there's a family member that's right behind them, or an adult who at school who's a really good mentor to them, they're more likely to reach out to somebody and say, I'm really having a hard time. But if they don't have an adult or somebody that they can go to, they're probably going to go to their peers, and they almost always do. So peer influence is really, really critical at this time of life, and that's who we're going to seek out is our friends.
And they don't know anything.
And the friends don't really know all that much. But what we're trying to do, and that to me is a fun thing about Youth First, is we're trying to train friends to help friends. So that, if you notice a friend is going through this, that's a great time to bring them down to the Youth First social worker. Because here's an adult who's sane, who is available to talk to you, and who can just be a good sounding board and help you through this.
There were times that I had, I had cut vertically. I had, intended to do something worse, but that was later on. At the beginning, I just kind of, I cut my wrist, but I never even thought that I could die. I never even thought it was a possibility until somebody said, well, what if you had struck a vein? And I was like, what? That's not going to happen to me. Yeah. That's not going to happen. Usually after I would purge, I would cut because I had felt like since I had eaten and I had to purge, that I deserved to be punished. I was doing the wrong thing and I was worthless, and this is what I deserve. This is the way it is. So that's what I would do to try and teach myself a lesson and teach myself not to eat again. And then other times I would do it just because I felt awful. So it was either as a self-punishment or just to get rid of things that were going on in my brain. I had tried to recover from my eating disorder on my own twice. And I ended up recovering the second time. Because I didn't want to ask anyone for help. I didn't want to bring anybody else into it because just in case I decided to go back. I didn't want to tell anyone about it, so it sounds really stupid, but I just kind of I just sucked it up and I just made myself do it because I knew I was going to die.
So you hit bottom.
Yeah.
Was there a panic mode when you hit bottom?
There kind of was a panic. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die for real. Like, it was kind of like that last sliver of the real me was in there and was like, whoa, hold up. You don't want to die. You don't really want to die. There's got to be something that can make this better. So after that rock bottom, I had started being honest with my psychiatrist, and she gave me the medication that I'm on now, and it just continued to get better, and eating became easier. So.
And how did it feel to be honest for the first time?
Scary. I was terrified that I was going to get locked up, and I was going to be like a freak, and that I would be on like 100 medications for a million different things, and I felt kind of like a guinea pig, because you kind of have to try and then stop medications and until you find the right one, and I felt like a guinea pig. I felt like we're never going to find the right medication, and then when we did, just made the world of a difference.
We don't know if it's because of the chemical imbalance, but there do seem to be folks who will have what is considered to be a major depressive episode and then go on to have recurrent major depressive episodes more times in their life. And it tends to be more of a lifelong struggle for some folks than other folks. People who tend to have one major depressive episode and recover from it in a fairly short term with the right help and intervention oftentimes don't go on to have another one in their life. And then there are other people, for whatever biological and environmental factors might be interacting, go on to have many, many more major depressive episodes and really do struggle and fight with it. And I wish that the science knew more about why, but we are still trying to figure out those questions. We have some good guesses and we're certainly working on it, but we don't have all the answers yet.
Medications have helped bring it down. It's still there, but it's helped bring it down. But whenever it is there, I just kind of know how to deal with it now.
So, have you progressed enough, you think, where you could recognize if one of your friends were doing the same thing, or your sister, or somebody, and would you try to intervene?
I think that it being kind of recent, that I would be able to notice more than someone who might have experienced it 2 years ago. So, yeah, I would definitely intervene as soon as possible because I don't want them to have to hit that rock bottom. If there's any way to prevent it, then, by all means, I gotta do it because it's one of the worst things I've ever experienced, and I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. And I couldn't let that happen to anyone that I care about. And the reason that I think that I didn't take it seriously was because I was being told by random adults that I didn't know. But if I had heard it from some of my friends, like coping skills and what to do, then I definitely would have believed them. So I think that me helping my friends would definitely be a lot more beneficial than them going to a psychiatric hospital.
That's kind of what you're doing right now. I mean, you're talking to people that potentially could be going through the same thing that you're going through, and you're saying, like, you're not alone. And that's a really good thing, that you're able to, like, help people, because some people are not really ready to hear from a psychiatrist. I mean, some people, like, you weren't ready. Do you think, though, that because you went to Crosspoint and you went to therapy, is there anything that you left with that you think was beneficial? Like, anything at all?
From Crosspoint?
Yeah.
Honestly, no.
Was it that you were just so totally, like, not ready to listen at all?
I didn't take any of it seriously. I didn't listen to anyone. I thought that the whole thing was stupid. This is overrated. They're making a big deal out of nothing. You know, it's my body, whatever. I'll do what I want with it.
Oh, I went there and I stood there like this.
That's what I did the whole time. Except I was cold,
with this
so
face.
I'd go like this.
You know, and it's like, pretty sure I'm not gonna ever listen to what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ready either, you know, so, but it was I consider it kind of like a little tiny piece of the journey.
Mhm.
And even though nothing really changed for me then, at least I got a little tiny something there. But everyone's different, you know. I'm just grateful that you got it when you did, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you continue to recover from here?
I think that the only thing I can do is just keep trying to make myself happy and keep forcing myself to push my comfort zone, you know, whether that be doing something that I don't really feel like doing, even though I'm kind of down in the dumps, you know, you just have to push yourself and keep pushing through it. And I think that's the only way you can continue to get better, because that's the only way it's going to get easier.
Do you think that you'll need to recover forever, or you know what I mean? Is it something that you think that you'll need to work at?
Definitely. I think that eating disorders, depression, cutting, all of that, it's gonna stick with you for your whole life, and that sucks, but you constantly have to fight for the happiness that you want. You can't just have it. You have to work for it, and I mean, it'll be worth it in the end, but you just gotta keep fighting. Before I went to sleep, I would write in my diary a lot. I would kind of try and like picture what I would like my life to be like, and just kind of like imagine how I would want things to be. And a lot of times I would just pray to God and say, like, make this go away. I don't know why my brain is like this, or
What do you mean by this? Like this?
like I don't know why I'm so sad all the time, and I don't know why I feel like I can't do things, just like simple things, like having the motivation to get up and go take a shower or go to school or do my homework. And I felt like I felt inferior to everyone else because they could do things that I couldn't do.
Support for this program is provided by
The Women's Hospital delivers comprehensive health care to women and infants through inpatient and outpatient obstetrical, gynecologic, and education programs. The Women's Hospital, only at Ganas.